if I can get everybody's attention, we'll go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody to the Metropolitan Planning Commission October 6th special called meeting, and this is on one issue. And I want to thank the commissioners and everyone for coming to attend. This is an important meeting, and we look forward to presenting, having this plan presented in front of us and an official vote today. A couple of housekeeping items. If you could make sure your phones are on silent, that would be great. And then for those of you who don't know, the University of Tennessee is playing LSU in a really close, hopefully close game this weekend on Saturday. The Tennessean did this really interesting, this is probably out of order, Vice Chair, I apologize. Did a very interesting article online about the history of why Neyland Stadium is Neyland Stadium, and the first time they played was, I think, in 1926, and it's just really interesting history. Actually, it's a great article. It's about 8 pages long, so it'll be an interesting game to watch. I knew you all were wondering about that, so probably out of order. I apologize, Vice Chair. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and the agenda, we're on item B, which is the adoption of the agenda, commissioners, and it was sent out to you prior to the meeting, and so we'll need a motion to adopt the agenda. So moved. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. And now we're on to the recognition of council members. And I don't think, other than the council members on the commission, I don't think I saw any other council members. We'll make sure. Okay. And so we do have the mayor's representative is going to be, we got a letter from the mayor, and so Councilor Berkeley Allen is going to be the mayor's representative, I think 2 meetings, is that correct? 2 meetings, so 3. So we welcome you back. We appreciate your service, and thank you for joining us, Council Lady. Really appreciate it. Next is the items to be considered, and so we are on our item, which is item 1, and Imagine East Bank Vision Plan. Come on, Commissioner. Hello, Commissioner. Before we, Commissioner Tibbs. All right. Before we get started, the mics, when they're turned on, all of them are on, and so just make sure you just know that for the record, okay? Make sure. We've had some hot mic issues lately. All right, so go ahead.
All right, thank you, commissioners. Is it working? I can't make it. Okay. Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Anna Grido with the Planning Department. Oh. Good afternoon, commissioners. Okay, all right, we're on. All right, good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Anna Grido with the Planning Department, and I'm going to be presenting this item to you this afternoon. At this special called meeting, the East Bank has certainly been a very special project for the Planning Department and the multiple other Metro departments that have worked with us on this, as well as the consultants. Okay. Trying to get it as close to my mouth as possible. Okay. It's going to stand in this awkward spot for a while. Okay. So let me get started. Before I do, there are a couple of things on your desks. The first is an updated plan. This reflects all the feedback we received over the last 6 weeks, and I will mention some of the substantive edits that you'll see within there. Next to that is an errata sheet that notes every page on which significant changes were made. So we hope those are useful tools for the commissioners. My presentation is going to focus on the items we're presenting for adoption, as well as an update on the feedback we received. We've had multiple briefings with the Commission over the last 21 months, so I'm not going to focus on specific components of this very detailed plan, but I'm happy to dive into those if you have questions upon them. So the request before you is to amend the Downtown Community Plan to adopt Imagine East Bank, which will replace the existing supplemental policy on the East Bank today, and update the Major and Collector Street Plan to include the new East Bank Boulevard, and amend Walk and Bike with NDOT's comprehensive plan update to that Walk and Bike plan. And as a reminder, again, our work involved multiple scales. From a policy perspective, we're focusing on that middle scale, the neighborhood scale, in the adoption of Imagine East Bank. But the work was informed from both a system-wide and city-wide level into detailed site-specific level, and that is all within the plan. But for our focus today, we're looking at the adoption within the East Bank study area, which is the 338 acres on your slide, from I-24 on the south all the way up to Jefferson Street to the north. As you're familiar, we have been working at this for the last 21 months. Our work on this began in February of 2021 when we held an informational meeting. This was during COVID, kind of peak of COVID, so this was a virtual meeting. We followed that up in April in introduction of Perkins Eastman and our sub-consulting team, and have continued having multiple public meetings throughout the past 21 months. They're totaling over 50 public meetings and presentations at this point, over 200 technical meetings, a large email subscription list, which allows us to get information out, and over 1,700 responses to our 4 online surveys. All of that input led into the 4 main chapters of the vision plan. And I'm going to take each of these in turn, give the commission a short reminder of the content, and then the feedback received from the latest survey, and how that was addressed in the draft plan that's before you. So for the last 6 weeks, since August 22nd, when the plan was released, we've had 33 meetings and presentations, 615 survey responses, nearly 9,000 views of the webpage, and 763 unique views of the story map. We've had a great time being all across the city, trying to engage as many people as possible to get feedback on the draft plan. So to begin with the first component of the vision plan, an equitable and affordable East Bank, this looks at advancing equity, resiliency, and a high quality of life for all Nashvillians through the creation of accessible and affordable places to live, work, and play. Equity and affordability are promoted through a multi-pronged approach that includes housing, multimodal connectivity, economic development, resiliency, and land use. And although this is its own standalone chapter, the vision for equity is woven throughout the entire vision plan. In terms of feedback from the survey, there was a majority support for the concepts within this component, and you see that on the pie chart before you. A lot of key topics, the top key topics was affordable housing and implementation. So there was majority support for affordable housing on the East Bank, though that wasn't unanimous. And the implementation questions related primarily to the level of affordable housing commitment, particularly on the Metro-owned property. So in order to address that feedback, the Housing Division of Planning, and Angie Hubbard is with us this afternoon, who can dive into more detail if you have those questions, hosted 4 housing-focused community meetings, 2 with the Affordable Housing Task Force, and 2 public meetings, as well as reviewing the input from the survey to establish affordability benchmarks for the first phase of development for on the Metro-owned land. These are on page 56 of your final plan, but Angie is, again, happy to answer questions related to that. The plan also outlines several strategies and tools for advancing housing diversity on the East Bank. This component, along with comments on affordable housing, also received comments on impacts to small, local, and minority-owned businesses. So we added additional guidance in the plan for next steps, including a recommendation for social and economic impact studies to be undertaken. Moving to the second vision plan component, safe and simple multimodal connections. This chapter looks in great detail at providing a robust multimodal transportation system to enable easy and equal access to and through the East Bank. And the proposed mobility plan prioritizes the experience of transit riders, cyclists, and pedestrians while improving street connectivity. For each of the networks, we also identify conceptual street placement and sections for those networks. Feedback, again, was plentiful on this topic and fairly diffuse with a majority support for the vision components. Much of the feedback related to transit, greenways, and walkability in general. There was a lot of input on the bike network and a particularly robust discussion around bike lanes and the East Bank Boulevard. In order to address that feedback, we added a spread, which is on page 66 of the document, that shows various alternate cross-sections for the boulevard to be considered during implementation, when more detailed engineering and design analysis will determine the appropriate cross-section. We also added a new rendering of a greenway to provide a deeper picture of how greenways and bikeways may coexist on the East Bank, as long as some general reorganization of the chapter for clarity. Respect for the river is the third vision plan component. This looks at recentering the river as a vital community amenity and bolstering resiliency through enhanced floodplain and stormwater management. The environmental strategy links flood resiliency and stormwater management with the creation of vibrant park space that provides a variety of river-oriented activities. From the feedback, majorities very positive in support of the vision outlaid in the plan and addressed the desire that we heard throughout the process for the ability for Nashvillians to better engage with the Cumberland River. We also heard questions in the feedback, general concern about flooding, as well as feedback from boating enthusiasts. So the desire from the boating community to see new investments on the river, we addressed that through adding a detail on waterfront programming. And updated that section to better communicate existing proposed and desired waterfront programming, including boating and amenities, and put that within the context of other developments along the Cumberland River in this area. The last vision plan component, Neighborhoods for Nashvillians, looks at how we can create vibrant, livable, and authentic neighborhoods that prioritize the everyday needs of Nashvillians. And you'll see within the plan that the East Bank is divided into 4 distinct neighborhoods with unique characteristics and contexts. Feedback, again, was positive from the proposed vision, with comments on the desire for affordable housing, discussion around impacts of the East Bank redevelopment on existing communities and neighborhoods, and a desire to provide services and spaces for locals. In terms of edits to the draft in this section, they were mostly related to additional guidance on best practices for sustainability, including prioritizing native tree planting and the investment in infrastructure to support the growth of a healthy tree canopy, as well as environmental building design and the provision of EV-ready parking spaces. So as you know, Commission, the vision plan includes 2 alternatives to accommodate the ongoing explorations around the stadium. And while the stadium is an important component of the study area, it's one part of a much broader area with the potential for positive change. So the vision plan's primary focus is the livability of the entire area, and we believe that basic plan elements that support the broader planning effort can be achieved under either scenario. And so there is the scenario shown on your screen with a relocated stadium, as well as the scenario with a renovated stadium. Both are shown within the vision plan. So to conclude the portion on the adoption of Imagine East Bank, the request before you is to adopt Imagine East Bank to replace the current supplemental policy. And the plan includes detailed guidance on mobility, equity and affordability, complete communities, and infrastructure. I'm going to move to the next piece, which is a request to update the Major and Collector Street Plan to add the East Bank Boulevard as an arterial boulevard to the MCSP from I-24 to Jefferson Street. The proposed East Bank Boulevard will include dedicated transit-only lanes in each direction. 110 feet of right-of-way is the typical right-of-way for the boulevard, with additional right-of-way where needed at intersections or stop locations. Once again, 2 conceptual alignments of the boulevard are shown, one with Nissan Stadium remaining in place and another with it moving to the east. Since a decision on the location of the stadium has not been made, the Major and Collector Street Plan amendment includes concepts for both futures. As a tool that's conceptual in nature, this will ensure that the intent of a continuous north-south boulevard through the East Bank is conveyed. Additionally, the section within the River North UDO, the section of Cowan Street within River North, from Jefferson Street to Cleveland Street should be updated to include 110 feet of right-of-way, consistent with recent discussions on River North. And so this slide shows the boulevard with a relocated stadium, and this slide shows the boulevard with the stadium remaining in place. As a reminder to the Commission, some of the right-of-way needed for the boulevard will be dedicated through rezonings, some through Metro's ownership of land, and then there's a portion between the red lines on your screen between Woodland and Jefferson Street that will need to be acquired, right-of-way will need to be acquired, and that is the partnership Metro and TDOT has, and work is underway for the necessary acquisitions. And the final request is to update Walk and Bike to identify the new bike facilities within the study area, and planning staff will work with NDOT to incorporate those bikeway elements as part of their comprehensive update to Walk and Bike. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval of Imagine East Bank to replace the current supplemental policy on the East Bank, to update the Major and Collector Street Plan to adopt the East Bank Boulevard, and to amend Walk and Bike with a comprehensive update. That concludes my presentation.
There we go. Oh, sorry. Thank you for the presentation. So commissioners will open this item for public hearing, and while it will probably take 2 votes, one will be on the actual vision plan and then one on the Major and Collector Street Plan. But we're having the public hearing just so everybody's on the same page for both items that we'll vote on. And so we'll go ahead and get started. So the way we'll handle this, we don't have a vision plan very often, but it's it's the public hearing portion of the, and so we'll have the microphone. You'll just come up here, and this is not our normal meeting area, and so come up here and sit down. You'll have 2 minutes, and the 2-minute timer is right there to give your public hearing and your public comments. And so anyone wishing to speak in support of the plan? Nobody likes it, I guess. I'm just kidding. Okay, seeing none. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Come on up. And then if you'll, so how we handle the public hearing is if you would state your name and address. And so come up to the black chair over here, and the timer is right there, sir. Please state your name and address.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ben Pasno. I live at 5710 Maxon Avenue. A lot of you all already know me. Hello. My comment, I wouldn't say it's directly negative, but I just would ask that the vision of the plan be kind of more followed through upon as it relates to some of the design elements that we see. I think I would encourage planning to go beyond. I think they've been creative in going beyond the traditional kind of thought process, and I would just ask that they kind of can expand upon the vision of complete streets, especially through the lens of equity as it relates to other forms of transportation. I realize that the bounds on the maps don't include the interstate, but know that there is a very large capacity of throughput that does not allow walking and biking. So I think from a lens of equity, it makes sense to have at least a car-free street within one of the four, I would say each of the four, but at least one of the four new neighborhoods. Also from a lens of business, we know that 4 times as much throughput is allowed through a bike lane at full capacity versus a car lane. And also, as a native Nashvilleian, a alignment with tradition. I think some of our best streets now are places like Printer's Alley, the Nashville Arcade. I know Nashville Planning Department is doing great work there after the Christmas bombing through expanding upon the vision of the arcade there. And then also 5th and Broad as well. So I just ask that we continue this great vision and just put it through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? And I don't see any council members. So seeing no one else wishing to speak, I declare the public hearing closed. And so commissioners, how about we just start with the vice chair and then we'll just go around. Vice chair?
They're on. Okay.
Everyone.
Okay. Well, this is very exciting, and I know we've said this before, but thank you very much to the planning staff. This has been a tremendous amount of work, and the public engagement really is second to none, and you guys should be commended because that's a lot of time in addition, but it's great that you've heard feedback from so many varied groups. So I'm excited to see a plan that really, I feel good. Of course, there's always going to be something that's not right, and we're in an early stage. A lot will change as we go, but it seems like we're in a really good place, a starting place. I had a couple of questions. First, I guess in terms of the Major and Collector Street plan and the East Bank Boulevard, if we adopt that, can you just tell me what that means? Especially as we're starting to see other new development, the Titan Stadium, one of the comments that we received addressed a couple of projects that thought that the road went through their projects. So can you explain what that means?
Sure. Anna, do you want to pull up the MCSP slides? So the Major and Collector Street Plan is part of our general plan, and so it's a conceptual expression of a city's goal for mobility. And you'll see there that we have 2 alignments, but they're actually pretty close together. And it's not unusual, Lisa can tell you, when we're looking at rezonings and there is a street that is identified on the Major and Collector Street Plan, land development team will make adjustments with additional information. But we think it's important to go ahead today and articulate that a north-south boulevard is critical to the accessibility, the urban design framework, to the multimodal function of the East Bank, but indeed the broader area as well, because it is something of a linchpin if you look at existing transportation plans to the north, to the south, to the east side, as well as downtown. And so completing this network is an important first step. So typically what we will do, and we have, the MCSP includes streets all over the county. In this instance, we know that the right-of-way will likely be acquired and has already been negotiated during rezonings or because we own the land, but that is not completely true of all of the properties. And so, Anna, can you show the area? So you might remember last year, there is a small portion of land that is privately owned where we anticipate needing to acquire the right-of-way, which is a typical city function. That right-of-way is shown between Woodland and Spring, and we have this partnership with TDOT to accomplish that, $50 million from both the city and the state together to accomplish that goal. But what I would say is when you acquire right-of-way, you have to have a really detailed understanding of exactly the metes and bounds of what's going to be acquired. In most instances, the decision around the stadium changes that a bit. And so we did need to meet the vision document approval here, but we also do need to make a final decision on the stadium. And then at that point, it will be very clear exactly what right-of-way needs to be acquired, and we'll be able to go through the process with council. But the Planning Commission approval of the Major and Collector Street Plan is a really important first step to say that this is a plan component that should be part of all of our implementation work moving forward.
So we will have the ability, depending on one of the configurations, to acquire that right away.
Yes, there is a process. We have already been to council to seek approval for the funding and to seek approval for the partnership with TDOT. So that hard step happened last year when we realized how critical the right-of-way was going to need to be to address all of the multimodal goals that we have. If we want fixed guideway transit, and I'm told that we do, and I'm so glad that Steve Bland is here today, then we will need to acquire right-of-way to accomplish that. If we want bikeways, we will need to acquire right-of-way to accomplish that. This area has never developed in the way that has those basic building blocks. And so to accomplish that, we will need to acquire the right-of-way. But there is a process to do that. So this commission can't just unilaterally say, and the right-of-way shall be here. We'll be working with council and the finance department. But the resources that framework has already been set in place. And so I hope that brings comfort to those property owners who are in that area, who have zoning that they want to move forward. We want to be a good negotiating partner with them. This is a first step for us to do that.
Well, that is definitely helpful. And my understanding is we expect some next step with the Titan Stadium, first quarter of next year.
So I can't speak to, so the process for the stadium approval and that discussion is a financial, operational, and certainly one that's going to involve a lot of council work. And so our goal was to give a view of the planning and design considerations around where the stadium is placed. And I would argue that there are some pros and cons to the stadium placement that certainly affect planning and design issues. So we've given that view here in this document, but I can't speak to when the council process and all the other operational and financial issues will be before council, but I have every reason to think, based on the public hearings with Councilman Mendez and the like, that that's something we're working towards as a city.
I guess the other just general, I guess one other, because I've seen a lot of discussion around this, is on the bike lanes and the debate about whether we have the bike lanes on the East Bank Boulevard or whether they go on the side streets. Is that, that obviously is still flexible to figure that out as we go forward, regardless of what we do with the major and collective street plan tonight. Is that correct, for the different options that are presented?
So if you look in the final recommendations, you'll see 3 sections on page 66. And I don't know if you have a view. Oh, perfect. It's up on the screen. We did, and I don't, if anybody on the plan implementation team wants to come up and correct or reframe anything I'm saying, we have mobility experts who have been advising us on this. What I will say is we took a holistic look at the multimodal options, not just on the Boulevard, but also on the parallel streets and the secondary streets, the relationships to the interstate and the existing bridges and the like. And we prioritize the kinds of modes that support people, right? Pedestrian ways, bikeways, and buses and the like. And so for the Boulevard, our first priority really is ensuring that we have dedicated bus lanes. That dedication is so important, and if you've watched transit planning throughout our city, that lack of right-of-way for dedicated transit has been a really difficult obstacle to overcome. Right-of-way is not exciting, but it is one of the most important things we can have for a great city transit system. So all that's to say, for the Boulevard, that is really critical. I think the sidewalks and the street trees are really critical. We did extensive modeling that gave us the alternative one, which would have placed bike lanes on dedicated, protected bike lanes on parallel routes that had direct access to economic drivers, as well as where people might be living and going and the like. And so we believe that that's a really good alternative. We got extensive feedback from bicyclists and others who said, we don't agree, and we want you to continue to evaluate this. And so our recommendation is these second two alternatives, which would include bikeways on the Boulevard, what that might look like. What we're recommending is that NDOT conduct the same level of analysis that they did on the first option, and also incorporate new information that we'll have as development occurs. Our goal is to have an East Bank that sets the standard for what we would want in a city for bike users, peds, and bus users. In every instance, though, I think it's important for us to say as a policy matter that the dedicated the dedicated bus service should be prioritized. And there will be a point at which we have to have hard conversations about other modes, that the dedicated bike lanes is something, or the dedicated bus lanes is something that we ought to focus on. Anybody have any? Oh, okay, they're happy with that, okay.
I think that makes sense, and I'm not a cyclist. I would be scared to cycle around most of Nashville today. So, whichever route we go, I'll defer to those that are, but it does seem to me, I personally liked the idea that you had the dedicated bike lanes off the main boulevard. I see the main boulevard serving some purpose of just getting people through. I mean, hopefully in an organized fashion, not an alternative to the freeway, but I did like the idea that it was sort of a throughway, and then you had sort of local uses on the other streets. But I think my only other two sort of comments, questions, I think I said this when we came up last time, if our goal is tree canopy, then we want to think about not having overhead power lines, because often our tree canopy is damaged when the power lines need to be cleared. And then the only other thing that I saw in the affordable housing goals, I would love to see these kinds of goals, to get 40% of units to 60% or below AMI. That's tax credit developments. I don't know how many parcels we have. The chance of us getting an allocation every year to meet that, I don't know how great that is. That's maybe something that can be discussed with MDHA and THDA up front. But, I hope these are goals, and there may be some flexibility because there's external factors that will impact our ability to accomplish that. I guess that's my list.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Tibbs?
Yeah, I thought I was going to ask to be skipped because I've been driving around Nashville, but I'm familiar, and I'm going to go ahead and just say the couple comments. Well, first of all, and you will probably get tired of hearing about this, but you guys did a great job of putting all this together, and this is definitely, I feel like it's a very thorough study, and I think it's something it's going to be a great culmination of a lot of work, and this is definitely evidence of it. And the only two things are the two things that are still, and one is I've already brought up before about the architecture. I brought that up at the other meeting, but as far as design standards and just, I know I said again, but I just once again, if I could just make sure I understand that as far as design standards that will be, put in place, or how will they be put in place? That's my first question.
This right here. Okay. Yes. So initially, the first phase of development will likely be focused on the Metro-owned property, and the planning department will be working on an urban design overlay for that piece, which will include design standards and much more detail than the vision plan lays out some core principles that we think is important that is pulled through into the urban design overlay, but it will be much more detailed in terms of bulk standards, height, materials, view sheds, and the like.
Okay. And is there already some thoughts about that already? And if it's in here, forgive me if that part's in here.
So most of that is within the neighborhoods chapter. We have details on development guidance that highlights specific things that we think are important. I mentioned some of the things we've added related to sustainable building and EV charging, but most of that detail is in development guidance in Chapter 7. Yes. Oh.
Helpful, sorry. Part of we looked across the river at some queues. We were overseeing the rebuilding of 2nd Avenue at the time that we were also playing the East Bank. And so we were able to have conversations about scaling building form down to open spaces and down to the river, for example, not creating long building walls. So there's some porosity. I think when you have a large greenfield site, the potential for big, long blocks is there, and we tried very hard to define block lengths, for example, to create a more pedestrian-oriented environment. So the principles for a real pedestrian, human-scaled experience on the East Bank are defined here. And so it's really to the next phase to get into more detailed guidance. And, if you had thoughts, for example, Commissioner, on materiality and whether we should focus on building materials and what type, that would be welcome input, and surely for the work in the future, but that's the kind of information we're open to hearing. There are a lot of arguments for and against something like that, but.
Sure. I'm more concerned with making sure that if there's just some kind of, we'll just call them guardrails, I guess, maybe even so, as far as the architectural character, of everything. I think that would just help the one-offs that could really, run off the whole thing. It's like, yeah, it's great, but, we have a couple that are and great does not mean they all look alike. I'm not saying that by any means, but just make sure that there's just some I'd just say, guardrails. So that's probably the easiest way for me to say it. And then the other thing, actually, you brought that up too, on the other end of it, is the pedestrian experience. I've spent a lot of time at the Seaport in Boston, that whole area, and in a way, they had a similar challenge. It just kind of took off, but they had basically, it was, I'm not going to say it was nothing, but it was a whole different type of area. And one of the things that I feel like it is one of its challenges, and a part of it's just because of the interstate, but it's pedestrian, and I do feel like, and with the bike lanes as well, but, the pedestrian, I think right now is the big thing with, walkers in Nashville and just everything that's going on, especially the connection back to downtown. So anyway, I won't belabor that, but understanding that whole pedestrian level, as you brought up, and bringing it down to that human scale, and that fabric that goes all the way through, and, love how the Greenway connects back. So anyway, that was my other comment. I think you guys did a great job, and just the main thing is just some guardrails on the architecture.
All right. So, Commissioner, on pages, that's 7.4, the development guidance, and just Commissioners, it's on page 110 through, looks like 113. But that's very good discussion. Councilman?
Chair, if it's okay, I might request it's just a point of privilege to go at the end. I've had lots and lots of conversations with members of the community. I've been able to join staff on so many of the discussions, so I'm very, very familiar with the plan. I'm really interested in hearing what my fellow commissioners think, and so if I could perhaps go at the heel of the discussion.
We'll put you at the heel.
That might allow me to either add some things that maybe haven't been touched on yet or to respond to some of the things that commissioners may
We'll put you
raise.
at the heel, Councilman. Thank you. Commissioner Henley? Commissioner Henley, you want
I believe as a matter of order, I should be recused. Thank you.
Oh, yes, recuse. Okay. Council Lady, you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you. It's good to be back. I will echo the thanks to the staff for all the work that's gone into this. I have attended several of the community engagement events, and it's just been a good opportunity to answer questions, and the responsiveness to have incorporated comments even up to the copy that I got a week and a half ago that you've incorporated changes is impressive that you're listening that carefully. So I've got a couple of questions about each of the four major themes. So with regard to housing, I will, I guess, request that as we look at design standards, we have the conversation of how do design standards and affordability interact, and knowing that sometimes insisting that everything be all brick can then make things unattainable. So just as, just to make sure those two conversations don't happen in silos, I think is really important. And this is probably way more in the weeds than we need to be, but on the portion of the metro land where we talk about housing, I'll just ask the question, is this vision consistent with potentially using some of that for a community land trust where Metro will continue to own the land regardless, but there are models where through that ownership of the land, it enables the rent of the property to be substantially lower than it would be if the rent has to include the cost of buying the land. And I don't know if Director Hubbard would like to respond to that, and I know that's probably more detail than we need to be, but just to make sure that we're not cutting off that option with this vision.
Well, So, did you forget my name? No, I'm kidding.
No, Angie. All I can remember is Angie.
So that's the point of repeated commitments that we have in the vision plan of not selling the metro land. That, in effect, operates like a land trust. That's the purpose of a land trust, is having it in perpetuity so that you could control what's built on it. And similarly, with metro continuing that public ownership, then the ground lease and the development agreements then would dictate that affordability requirement that's within each of those developments.
Thank you, Director Hubbard. I appreciate that. Thank you, Angie. That's what I know. Okay, so on the multimodal, I will say I am a cycler, and I would never ride down West End Avenue. And I guess maybe if we added a protected bike lane, I would consider it. But I feel much more comfortable choosing side roads with bike lanes than on big ones. So I appreciate the fact that we now have three options to look at, and I look forward to seeing what our transportation experts come back with on that. So it's good to have lots of options on that. And I'm glad we're not throwing out option one as well. And then secondly, I think you went through and showed how the north-south bike lanes on the new roads would connect to the east-west that are already there. And there are already east-west things in East Nashville. I'll have to ask. I'm a cyclist, but I usually don't cross the river unless I'm just going to Shelby Park. So do things go, thank you, to others. So are most of those, yeah. So we've got the dashed ones are new things that we think will be developed as part of that?
Yes. Yeah, the solid line are the existing, so the Sharrow that's on Shelby/KBB and the pedestrian bridge, the protected bike lane along Davidson. And the dash lines are all new bikeways that will be protected, grade separated lanes.
Okay, and they're, their realization is enhanced by the fact that we've now got these things that connect them. So that's great. Okay, then as far as the river goes, at one of the early meetings that I came to, there was a person who came and said there are a lot of barges that actually use this for commerce. Do we have, in the long-range plan, the ability to figure out how we can safely have that barge traffic continue? Because I think that's probably important, as well as kayakers and rowers and whoever else wants to be out there.
Yes, so that's been a big topic of conversation because the Cumberland is a working river that has a lot of barge traffic. We have 4 main barge companies that use the river. So our recommendation that you'll see in the vision plan is that in order to understand how those things can coexist, barges with kayaks or motorcraft, there needs to be an operational study to understand the uses of the river and how they can work together and not be in conflict with each other. So that's one of the core recommendations moving forward.
Okay, so that's just distinctly written there. That's great. And then with regard to the neighborhoods, I mean, obviously, this is an evolving plan that we expect to take decades to happen. So, I mean, right now, there are big-time industrial uses that may have environmental consequences down the line. So two questions. Who will pay for the environmental remediation? Does that just fall to whoever buys the property in general? And does any of the metro property have environmental issues?
So as you know, there are stringent state and federal guidelines for how to handle the types of environmental remediation that might be necessary and defining what those are. And so in the event those are identified, typically it would fall to the property owner who is seeking to develop the land. And so we would just simply await those things at implementation and go from there.
Right, and I'm sure everyone will do due diligence as things change hands. Okay, cool. And then last question. Sight lines have come up already, so just to ensure, I will say one of the votes that I had on this commission regarded property very close to the river blocking off the view from the person behind them, and it was a hard decision. And I think ultimately they actually changed it, which I'm glad because I felt guilty about what I okayed. So live and learn. And so I think what I heard you say was that in terms of form and structure, there is built into this vision plan that we would not allow, for example, the tallest skyscrapers to be right there next to the river, having a lovely view that no one else can then enjoy. Did I interpret that statement correctly?
The idea? Yes. Yeah, just to elaborate a little bit, we looked at the topography of the land on the East Bank to understand where tall buildings might be appropriate and how they could least impact view sheds, both of the river and towards our downtown skyline. So more detailed work will be done, but the vision plan includes words about scaling buildings down to the river, down to public spaces like our greenways and any parks on the East Bank in order to make them feel like human-scaled, enjoyable places with the opportunity to look across the river at downtown.
Gotcha. And then right now, because the interstate has created such a divide, there are houses up Shelby Avenue that have an incredible view of downtown that is truly a gift to that part of East Nashville. Is it possible that some of that remains, and is it only just a little skinny place on Shelby Avenue, or potential? I mean, have we thought that far ahead? Do we know?
I think we know that we want to, considering view sheds, look outside of the study area to understand that Shelby, rises considerably, and there is a great view when you're driving down towards downtown. So we would extend that analysis more broadly to include that.
Great.
We did hear that height at the bridges could be appropriate because the bridges are already significant structures. So we just want to look at how that could work once you zoom out towards East Nashville.
Okay, I think that's appropriate to keep in mind. That's all my questions. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this.
Thank you, Council Lady. Commissioner Haynes.
Am I on? There I am. So Chair Atkins and I get the honor of being the long-term veterans on this body of almost 12 years. And aside from Nashville Next, this may be one of the most proud moments of serving, because this staff has done an excellent job the past 18 months. If you think about master planning over 330 acres and what a gift it is to the future of our city, the thought and effort that have gone into this plan, especially 100 acres of city-owned land, is fantastic. I want us to all think about what this will be in 25 years. And this is going to be a real catalyst, especially to create a diverse neighborhood in downtown that we don't have. This is going to be fantastic. Can we go to the collector and street plan slide real quickly? And back to Vice Chair Farr's comments, knowing that there are a couple of projects in the queue, if the stadium decision were to get postponed, how does the right-of-way acquisition change for the one or two projects that are sort of in the queue, and how do we help those projects move ahead if the stadium decision gets postponed?
I'm going to defer to some mobility experts.
I think expert is a stretch. I am Ben York. I'm with NDOT. I have been assigned to the East Bank team for the last, looks like 2 decades, but it's been 18 months.
Am I close enough? Okay. So I will say that this conversation has come up on a recurring basis because we would like to acquire right-of-way quicker than we can. One of the necessary steps is acquiring right-of-way for a road that doesn't exist on any metro map or plan. So that's part of the kind of the housekeeping measure of getting that in order so that we can acquire that right-of-way. It needs to show up on a plan before we can just say, before Metro can authorize us to go buy that land. Director Kemp is absolutely correct. We have a partnership deal with the state of Tennessee to do early acquisition, which is a step that has never been done in the city of Nashville, and I do not believe that it has been completed in the state of Tennessee as yet to date. So we're a guinea pig for the state of Tennessee in that space as well. How it affects those property owners has been an item of great turmoil from some of the people that are sitting in the room behind me today. We've had some good conversations and some tough conversations that have been fruitful for our side, and hopefully they would feel the same. I'm sure it's not the answer that some individuals would like to get, because they would like to be able to get a decision and move on in a quicker pace than we're currently allowed. So I don't know that there's a good answer for your question, but we know that that's a point of concern and a discussion that's going to occur continuously in the future.
Ben, can you just speak to two things? One is, we are, in addition to partnering with the state, following the National Environmental Policy Act process, which is a federal environmental review to ensure that whatever we build will qualify for transit funding in the future. And so we're future-proofing some of our work. And I think with this vote, what we can do and will do is sit down with the property owners that will be affected under either scenario and talk about what acquisition would look like under either scenario, so that they can plan, whether or not, there's footprint left to develop. And so we will, make that step. But the acquisition itself, I think, can't happen until the stadium decision is made, is, I think, the challenge, because we're talking about feet, right, that matter in an acquisition.
So what I would encourage you all to do, it sounds like you're already doing this, but we need a contingency plan. We need to assume that the stadium decision, no fault of the council or anybody else's, gets postponed, so that these projects can move forward. If you think about where we were a year ago with interest rates and material costs and where we are today, these projects are at jeopardy. Now, at the end of the day, they're going to have much more viable projects given this great plan. So I think they're going to be paid for their patience, but we just need to have a plan in case the stadium is delayed.
And we agree.
Thank you. I think the only other comments really are revolving post-approval. A couple of suggestions for y'all to think about. One, back to Commissioner Tibbs, I do think for non-city-owned land, having some overarching design guideline goals, I don't think we can necessarily impose design guidelines on private landowners, but to have goals and objectives that help dictate that is really going to be important. It's very rare you get the chance to master plan this large a track. And so to have that and have, an architectural firm help us come up with those design guidelines would be helpful. Secondly, much like we had a convention center authority sort of run the project, does it make any sense to have sort of an East Bank authority that would help the Planning Commission, help NDOT, help other departments sort of be the interface for some of these big projects? And then thirdly, have you thought about a business improvement district like Tom Turner uses with the Downtown Partnership for the core downtown to have collective, holistic street cleaning, trash pickup, landscaping, some things like that? So those are just suggestions post-approval.
Again, I'll echo what has already been said about our tremendous staff. It brings back old memories, but they're good memories. This is an ideal team, and I won't belabor that if we've already had enough. Boy, there have been so many things that are brought out. I kind of feel a little bit left behind because I had missed a couple of things. So I'm going to withhold anything at this time and just see where we land.
Thank you, Chairman. Councilman, you want to go next?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I want to thank our staff that have worked so diligently. I also would like to, just as a point of privilege, thank so many of the community members individually, as well as some of our organizations in town who have helped us to get the word out about engagement opportunities, have participated so heavily. There is a lot of concern about how this scale of development will affect East Nashville, and particularly the adjacent neighborhoods, the immediately adjacent neighborhoods. And so I really want to thank our neighborhood leaders from Cleveland Park, Farron Park, Maxwell Heights, in District 5, in District 6, Edgefield, Casey Place, the Shelby Hills Neighborhood Association. When you get to the tail end of that multimodal spine street, it comes down what is today a very narrow neighborhood street in the Shelby Hills neighborhood. And so those neighbors have been really helpful in participating, and want to thank those neighborhood leaders for their work with that. We also have on our neighborhood advisory committee have had engagement with the faith community. Nashville First Church of the Nazarene has been a great neighbor, and they serve a lot of folks in our community. Catholic Charities, Loaves and Fishes, Crosspoint Church, Martha O'Brien Center, trying to think, Friends of Shelby Park and Shelby Bottoms. Again, if you go down Davidson Street, you end up in Shelby Park, and not only is that a critical connection that extends beyond this footprint, but the Friends of Shelby Park group also again has a lot of connections and community support in East Nashville, and it's been great to have all those folks that are even at some distance from this footprint itself be engaged in that. So I want to thank those neighbors who have participated so heavily. I've really benefited in a lot of ways from having an opportunity to work within my schedule to be able to attend so many of the meetings with staff. Obviously, I think the number one concern, I think in the city largely, but in this area is affordable housing. I've had the opportunity to join the Affordable Housing Task Force series of meetings, which was instructive to me. I see some of the advocates in that space who are here today. I think that at the end of that process, we came up with, and not to belabor a point, but in the errata sheet, you see that we've worked with the Affordable Housing Task Force to come up with some recommendations for AMI levels. Particularly for the Metro-owned land. Hopefully we can do that maybe through more the carrot side than the stick side, but for some of the privately owned land as well. But I think in particular, we've had a lot of discussion just in recent months about the upward adjustment to the area median income figure going so high for our area. So we have sort of needed to, in order to make sure that Nashvillians who live here today or hope to live here, can afford it, we've sort of had to lower where we're at in the AMI projections of what's needed to what 60% or below, and hopefully in some cases even 30% or below. One of the things that I've commented on is that while it is true that there are no houses on the East Bank today, we do have folks who live there, and they live there unhoused. And it's been very important to me to remember that and to raise that in those discussions and to say that, we've had homelessness in East Nashville for, I know folks who have been working on that since the 70s. In East Nashville, and not only, despite that hard work, has that not been solved. In some ways, it's probably getting worse and will get worse if we don't take definitive action. And so I take that very seriously, and I know that a lot of our community members do. I know planning staff do, especially the housing department. I know this commission does. But I think it's a really important statement to say that this document, even contemplating that, the staff worked so hard with the Affordable Housing Task Force to come up with some measurable goals and guidelines that are going to be adopted in this plan. I think that is important and will be helpful as we go back in future years to the implementation phase. So I think that's important. One other thing, too, we definitely hear from a lot of bike folks. I think to Councilmember Allen's point, we do have some projects that, from an east-west standpoint, have been in the works for a long, long time. There is a project called the East Nashville Backbones Grant, which is a TDOT grant through the Greater Nashville Regional Council, which contemplates having a protected or at least a buffered bike lane along Woodland Street that goes from Public Square, where the 3rd Avenue bike lanes are, goes from Public Square at least to 11th. Then after 11th on Woodland, there may be some other treatments that we can do, but we're not so sure about the bike lanes. But for Woodland, for 5th Street, down from, essentially from Main Street down to Davidson, as well as when you get to 10th Street. 10th Street is one of those kind of, it was an existing street when urban renewal happened. Somehow it got turned into a 4-lane road, which was never needed at that time. And causes some problems. But that grant includes redesigning all of those streets. I'm most optimistic for the Woodland side, hopefully getting started relatively soon. For the South 5th Street side, there is a major sewer project that we're going to have. Not to say we can't get design underway, but construction might be delayed at least a little bit by that sewer project on 5th that we hope will start next year. But so that network will be fleshed out relatively soon. I think for the East Bank plan, we're kind of looking at maybe decades for some of these before it's done. But I would have loved to have seen the Woodland Street bike lanes done before the end of my term. That's not quite going to happen, but I've been really kind of pressing on NDOT at least to get that design work underway. And I'm pleased to say that we're kind of there. For KVB and Shelby, we also have that's been a priority area because it is so difficult, even as a pedestrian and definitely as a cyclist, to get we do have bike lanes on Shelby itself, but once you get to the interstate, even though they're technically there, it's pretty scary. And we've had pedestrian strikes and things of that nature right there where the interstate ramps are on Shelby. So we do have a project that is also imminent to turn that into what's called a marquee bike lane, and I'm really excited to see that, but that should happen very, very soon as well. And also updates to the existing bike lane along Davidson. So those critical sort of east-west connections and maybe even 5th Street will actually happen in the next couple of years. I'm excited to say, right? So we will begin to see some of these benefits of bike connectivity in particular very, very soon. And I think that will help as some of the other development pieces come online after that. And hopefully they'll be designed to take advantage of and enhance those bike lanes that we will have. But wanted to point that out. Obviously, I think is it 16 miles of new bike lanes that we're adding in addition to that. So all the things that I've discussed are even on top of the new bike lanes that are being added potentially within the East Bank. One of the things, too, going back to the topic of affordable housing with the Affordable Housing Task Force, into this idea of the impact of this development on East Nashville neighborhoods. One of the suggestions that I heard that I believe was brought forward by the Urban League was retaining a consultant to conduct a social and economic impact study. I thought I was really struck by that. That's not something that I I don't think I've ever worked on before myself. So was just excited to know that is something that exists. There is a discipline that does that in a meaningful way, and that planning has committed to engage with that. I thought that was really helpful. I think with our discussion with the boating community or the river user community, we had a lot of discussion. One of the things that I thought was most illuminating to me was a comment that what folks wanted to see, regardless of whether you were a kayaker or a person who owns a craft of some kind, one of the comments I thought was really helpful was the idea that the East Bank should engage the river, not just from the standpoint of people coming to the river and down the banks to the river, but also that folks who are using the river for transportation of some sort should also, it should be designed in such a way that they would be able to easily and conveniently come from the river and up to the banks and enjoy the offerings that we're going to have on the banks. I thought that was a really helpful way of, without kind of prescribing a particular location for a facility or type of facility, just to say that you should be able to, if you're using the river as human transportation and not as freight transportation, that you should be able to come to the East Bank and then from there get to a park, a museum, a school, an entertainment facility, a coffee shop, whatever it is, that we should really integrate the river sort of from the river up as well as from the banks down. I thought that was really helpful. I do like the emphasis on having things being pedestrian scaled that Commissioner Tibbs has described. I think the design guidelines are needed, but to me this goes back to what is the most important facet of the East Bank Boulevard other than the dedicated bus lanes, but it's those really wide sidewalks and it's the trees. And I think that will do most of that work. When we had the bike sort of discussion, one thing, I know Commissioner Farr has touched on the overhead power lines, but one of the things that was raised to me by one of my constituents who is a landscape architect is, she said, sometimes we even have tree planting wells or planting strips in Metro, and then you put in underground utilities in that space, and it precludes planting trees there too. So we really need to think about that, not just from an overhead encroachment, but an underground encroachment, to make sure that when we put in those tree wells and planting strips, that they really will support, hopefully, shade trees as well as street trees. So I thought that was, again, something that I really learned from a constituent during those constituents, and I was really glad that I was able to be present to hear that. But other than that, I just, again, want to thank the staff and all of our community members who participated so far. We will, I've described this as not the end, but a beginning of a process, because after adoption, then we can work on implementation, and a lot of these conversations will continue. I really hope that, I think Commissioner Haynes has brought a good point about having some sort of a body or an entity that's set up to sort of guide implementation. But my hope is that sort of community advisory group that we have, that is such a strong group, that I hope that sort of neighborhood advisory side also moves on in perpetuity, so that we just ensure that the neighborhoods not only are not being adversely impacted even by things like construction, but that they help to bridge some of those gaps that are going to remain as the interstate stands there. We really want all of this to be one large cohesive neighborhood from downtown all the way over to East Bank and East Nashville and beyond. So I think that that neighborhood advocacy side is going to be really important to maintain beyond today as well. So with that, I'll close my comments, but thank you, everyone, for your participation.
Thank you, Councilman. And I want to thank you because, you've really stepped up and helped your community and listened and took part of the action and really almost felt like you were part of the planning staff. So you worked so hard on it. I mean, seriously, and it hasn't gone unnoticed. And I want to say personally, thank you very much. And I want to thank the council. So I'm going to thank a few people just because I think it's important, and then we'll get to the vote. Because so this is the first step, right? And we've talked about that. This is the first concrete step for making it a reality. But the one person who can make this a reality is our mayor. And I want to thank him. He's talked to me and the director ad nauseum about making this happen. And so I want to thank our mayor personally, and I want to thank him moving forward into the future, that he's committed to make it happen, and the council. And I know you all are committed to that. I also want to thank Sean Parker, Councilman Parker, because this includes his particular area as well, and he's been very helpful. And I want to thank you as commissioners. We started on this journey 21 months ago. We've had meetings on the East Bank, we've had tours, and I want to thank the staff team, of course, but I want to thank the director. The director and I have had discussions probably ever since I've known the director, and she's been committed, and she's kept her foot on the gas, and I feel like it took an entire team and a lot of effort and a lot of meetings, and especially Anna, thank you so much. You were really awesome in your diligence, very professional, and I know that, as you can tell, there were some tense moments in discussing what's appropriate, what's not, and so I know that it could be stressful, but you handled it in a very professional way, and I think that that's something you should be proud of. And I think the entire staff, I can name everybody that worked on the project, but I really want to thank the director and Anna. I also want to thank the consulting team and all of their subcontractors, and that was Perkins Eastman. They were the lead consultant on the project, and there were several others. Key stakeholders, including the owners of the property. And look, I know there's some uncertainty, but in my mind, at the end of the day, I think that the property owners are going to be the folks that are going to have this is going to be a really good thing for them. I understand right away and that sort of thing is hard to deal with, and uncertainty. But we're all here to work on it together. There's going to still have to be a lot of discussion, but I think that this is a step in the right direction. I want to thank the Neighborhood Advisory Committee. And the councilman touched on all of the neighborhoods. I want to thank even the nonprofits and religious organizations that were part of that. A lot of discussion, a lot of thoughtfulness, and then the Technical Advisory Committee. I also want to thank TDOT. They've been an extreme partner in this, and because there's going to be a lot of federal money involved, and state money, I think that it's important, and that partnership, I want to thank our team for working really hard on that particular partnership. There are a lot of moving parts to this moving forward, but like I said, look, I think Jeff and I are extremely proud of this, being the folks that have been on this commission way too long.
That's not true.
But I want to say that just like Nashville Next, which I thought was groundbreaking at the time, I think that we've taken it a step further, the team has. And it's a model for public outreach. It's a model for how you work together with all of the stakeholders and the council and the mayor. And I think that that's important. And we've created that with a very, I think, limited number of staff members. And that's something to be proud of while we're still doing all of our regular work. I don't know if you guys know what the Nashville bird is. It's the crane. It's the crane. It's still the crane, which means there's a lot of work that the planning department does outside of this particular project. And so I'm extremely pleased where we are with the team, and I know we're going to have some new staff members because the council's given us a little more money in the mayor, so I appreciate that. So I think, lastly, you saw it here. It's a testament that we didn't have widespread opposition, and we're here till midnight. We had one person speak, not really in opposition. And so I think that's a testament to how hard everyone has worked on the project. And so with that, we need a motion. Now, two different motions. The first motion will be a motion to adopt the Imagine East Bank Vision Plan. And so we will need a motion to do that.
So moved.
It's motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and it's unanimous. Next vote would be to adopt the Major and Collector Street Plan to include the new East Bank Boulevard and amend the Walk-Bike Strategic Plan for sidewalks and bikeways. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion. Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in, Council Lady.
Sorry. Should have done this earlier.
No, it's just.
One question. So, I mean, we've shown kind of two general things. If that needs to be tweaked later, is there flexibility in that, where that actually lands?
Sure, yes.
Okay, yeah, good. Thank you for that clarification.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. All right, so that concludes our special meeting.
Chairman, may I?
Yeah. The director, Kim.
I just want to thank the commission for your service to the city, for coming into the special call meeting. I'm sorry, Kelly and I bothered all of you so much. Could I ask this planning staff and the Metro staff who are in the room to stand? Don't be shy, please.
Nice.
So we have Anna Greider, Rochelle, Harriet, Greg Claxton, who's not here, John Houghton, Angie Hubbard, Jared Islis, Bob Murphy, Olivia Rancine, Sean Shepard, who's here, Mark Sturdivant, Hazel Ventura, Joni, Ben York, and I don't know if Steve stood up, but he was an incredible partner. And so all of you, we're so grateful to you for everything you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right, so that concludes our business for today. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.